4 years of war have disrupted daily life for many people in Russia. With the economy increasingly focused on military production rather than civilian needs, many businesses are closing their doors. Here's what people in Moscow say that they've endured so far.
I believe that our lives have changed for the worse because a lot of people suffer from it. My relatives in my native city of Volgograd bear the brunt of the war. There are attacks on all kinds of power facilities, leaving people without power and heating. Plus, there are water outages. I think Russia hasn't achieved anything good so far. I don't think it will end this year, and it will definitely not end with a great victory of Russia. As always, ordinary people will pay for all this.
Everything is fine. We're just waiting for our relatives and friends to come home.
Andrey Kortunov joins us now. Andrey is a Russian foreign policy analyst, and you were the Director General of the Russian International Affairs Council. You're joining us from Moscow. Good to have you on the program, Andrey. Has this war been worth it for Russia?
It's hard to tell. I think it's a matter of values rather than of interests. If you believe that the existence of your country is at stake, then perhaps the only way to deal with the problem is to wage such a war. If you believe that the fate of your country is not at stake, then the price might be too high.
Whose existence was threatened?
Well, if you look at the formal Russian narrative, they will explain to you that Russia was encircled by the West. The West used Ukraine as a tool to jeopardize the Russian sovereignty and even the Russian existence at large. So the only option that the Kremlin had at its disposal was to preempt the actions by the West by starting the special military operation. This is the official narrative that I can give you.
So what has Russia, if anything, got out of this war? I mean, what's been the big prize? Were Russians, and I suppose you started to touch on this, but were Russians clamoring for control of Donetsk or Zaporizhia or Kherson and even willing to die for it? Because it doesn't feel like it.
Well, I don't think that the territorial dimension is the most important in this conflict. Of course, I think it is something that the Russian leadership can claim as a victory, that Russia will have 4 more regions and a couple of million people more. And of course, these people are mostly Russian speakers, and they quote-unquote belong to the Russian cultural and civilizational space. But it's not just about that. It's about the future of the European security. The Russian leadership maintains that the West ignored Russia's interests, that Russia was somehow marginalized in the European security system, that NATO was expanding rapidly to Russia's borders, and this movement had to be stopped.
But even if I follow the logic that you've done a great job, thank you, of explaining that to us, the Kremlin's logic, right? How they saw things. Is this, I mean, what benefit have they got after 4 years? Because if you look at it, there are more members of NATO now, right? The Western Military Alliance. There are more members, not fewer. There are now Western missiles that are being fired, granted by the Ukrainian military, but it's still Western weapons being fired directly at Russia. The inflation is up, the economy is doing fairly poorly, and Russia is heavily sanctioned.
Well, the price was substantial. I think the perception is that this conflict is reaching a kind of tipping point. Russia is moving ahead, maybe slowly, but steadily. There is a lot of Ukraine fatigue in the West, and most importantly, the new U.S. administration led by Donald Trump has changed significantly its approach to the conflict. Russia is no longer blamed by the White House as the sole responsible for this war. And apparently the United States is ready to motivate Ukraine to accept at least some of the Russia's conditions for the termination of this conflict.
When you say the White House doesn't blame Russia anymore, it really depends what week we are listening to Donald Trump. I mean, that is often true, what you say, but he'll regularly fire off a tweet against Vladimir Putin saying, I'm going to take very strong sanctions. And in fact, Donald Trump has imposed further sanctions on Russia. So he hasn't completely taken his foot off the gas and off the pressure on Russia. I wonder if you think Russia might at some point either reduce its asks of Ukraine or make some concessions of its own as part of these peace negotiations.
Well, if you have negotiations, that implies that you are looking for a compromise, and that means that you should demonstrate a degree of flexibility. Of course, it remains an open question how flexibility is exactly interpreted in the Kremlin. But they cannot expect Donald Trump to accept all Russia's conditions. Definitely, the Russian position has to be modified. When they talk about the so-called anchorage spirit, they underscore that Russia demonstrated some degree of flexibility there. We do not know exactly what it was, how far the Russian leadership was ready to go in order to end this war. But apparently, judging from what Trump says, Russia did exercise some degree of readiness to reach a compromise. It's yet to be seen. Of course, the glass is either half full or half empty.
Andrey Kortunov joining us from Moscow. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Don't miss out. Get a full picture. Subscribe to Al Jazeera for reliable news, expert insight. Like, share, stay ahead.